Jen, and I am a peer leader with SDS at Renison University College. And right now we have lovely Becky and Libby with us to talk to us about how to become a teacher and all things teaching. And just to let everybody know, we are going to be recording this just so that people who weren't able to attend this evening can watch it later and get that same information that you're getting now. So if you want to ask a question, that's perfectly fine, but just kind of know that if your camera's on or if you decide to speak, that will be recorded and uploaded onto, I think, our website and Facebook later. Yeah, and I'll pass it off to Becky to get us started.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. So obviously, well, hopefully you're here because you're interested in a career in teaching. And if you're not here or thought that it was something different, like, please feel free to just like maybe leave the meeting now and take back an hour of your life if you don't want to learn about a teaching career. Okay, let's see. So maybe before we jump into content, Libby and I are just going to do some like intro pieces. Libby, do you want me to start first? Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Becky. I use she, her pronouns. And up on the screen, you will see a photo of my dog, Benny, in his Christmas onesie. This was last season when he was like super fluffy. And some things about me as a human is that I make wind chimes from thrifted materials. I love apple crisp and I love swimming in Lake Huron with my dog, Benny. Tonight, I'm facilitating from the lands of the Neutral, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And for me personally, I like to physically situate myself as kind of one part of my practice to acknowledge the historical and ongoing actions of colonialism. And so one way I can do that as a white settler is to physically situate the lands that I am on. And I'll pass it off to Libby.
Yeah, so I'm Libby. I am a graduate of the SDS program at Renison, and I'm currently doing my Bachelor of Education at Laurier University. I also work as a student advisor at the University of Waterloo as well with Becky. Some stuff about me is I play piano, I like to camp, and I cook often. And I like to situate myself specifically on the Haldimand tract. I find this important just as someone who is going to be teaching children and youth soon in a school setting. I find it important for myself to learn about and be able to teach the land that we are situated on.
Okay, so what we're going to be chatting about today. First off, how do I become a teacher in Ontario? So we're going to have a high-level look at applying to Teachers College in Ontario, saying some specific things about Teachables, as well as maybe additional qualifications that you might be interested in pursuing after your teacher education program. We're going to chat about what do I need to apply. So again, a high-level look at the application components, including when to apply, where to apply, and the cost of applying. We're going to chat a little bit about what if I want to study abroad. So a bit of detail on if you were going to study abroad in literally any place in the world and want to return to teach in Ontario. We're also going to chat a bit about working abroad. So maybe either doing your education, your teacher education program in Ontario or abroad, and then taking some time to teach abroad. And then as well at the end, if you have questions, you are totally welcome to ask throughout the presentation when it feels good for you or when it makes sense for you. So you can, I don't know, unmute if you would like that. You can put your question in the chat and we will take some time like then and there to answer that question. Or if you want to kind of save your question till the end, that's cool too. I cannot see my like the chat and share my screen at the same time. So I will be less accountable to what's happening in that space. But Libby has told me that she will for sure let me know if a question comes in there so that we can take some time to answer that in the moment. This is kind of what we have on the agenda for today. Okay, so how do I become a teacher in Ontario? I just want to make sure, Libby, do you want to say things about this one? Do you want me to?
I can.
Okay.
So how to become a teacher? There's a couple of required qualifications. That includes minimum 3-year degree at an accredited university. So you're at Renison, that's an accredited one. You can do a 4-year one. It can be honors. It doesn't have to be honors. The program itself, Bachelor of Education is what it's called. It is technically a master's program, but they refer to it as a Bachelor of Education. It is a 4-semester, so 2-year full-time teaching education program. They don't currently offer it in a part-time capacity. You can do it in English or French. You are certified once you complete your Bachelor of Education to teach wherever you were educated and possibly elsewhere in Canada. So what that looks like is you get your certification here in Ontario, you're able to go to different provinces. If you go, let's say to BC and want to come back, that looks a bit different and it depends on the actual school that you decide to go get your Bachelor of Ed at. There's also suitability requirements. So you need to make sure you have your current criminal record check, vulnerable sector. You need an online declaration, and then also a statement of professional standing.
Yeah, so what we're going to be focusing on today in this workshop is the 4-semester or 2-year full-time teacher education program. The professional suitability requirement, that's something you have more information about or learn more about once you are like in your program and or once you finish your program and you're in the steps of, okay, now I want to like be a real live teacher and do teaching things in a specific school. Or in a specific board. So information about that can also be found on the Ontario College of Teachers website. All of the, or maybe I shouldn't say all, a chunk of the information in this workshop is taken from the Ontario College of Teachers website. And the other chunk is from TEAS, which stands for Teacher Education Application System, I'm thinking, or like some version of that, but that is the application portal that you use for Ontario programs. So all of this information can be found in those 2 spots. And maybe at the end, I can share links for things as well once I stop sharing my screen. Okay. Do you want me to start with this one, Libby? Do you want to start with this one?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
So there are specific divisions in teaching to which you will apply to. And those are primary junior, which is JK to grade 6, junior intermediate, grade 4 to grade 10, intermediate senior, grade 7 to grade 12. So those are when you're applying for a teacher, for your teacher education program, you will apply to a specific teaching division. And depending on what, you can apply to more than one division if you would like to, but they have a bit of a different requirement or requirements. So primary junior, there are no teachables required, and we'll get into what teachables mean in a couple of slides. Core courses are given preference for admission, as well as experience with the age group that you want to be teaching. So experience with kids ages JK to grade 6. I have no clue what those specific ages are, but maybe Libby, you do. JK is like what, 4 years to, I don't even know.
Yeah,
Grade 6.
ages 4 to 12 typically. They also, like, if you've worked with a bit of an older age group on top of that, just so that they know like you've worked with older people and you're choosing to work with younger children.
Yeah. Experience with age group, that is something that usually comes up on your experience profile, and we'll chat a little bit more about that. in a few slides. Then there's junior intermediate, grades 4 to grade 10. One Teachable is required for this particular teaching division. Again, core courses are given preference for admission. The level of undergrad courses is used for Teachables. So this can look different across programs. So I would always encourage like checking out this specific program website, but often you'll have to have like X amount of courses above the 100th level in a particular subject for them to count towards your Teachable. And again, experience with age group. Are there things that you want to add to the junior intermediate, Libby?
For the Teachables in particular, and we'll get into this more in a minute, but there's also specific courses that don't count. So that can look like business writing for an English one, for example. So it's important to look at each school has a different like requirement for what does and doesn't count. So that's something to consider as well.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. And then there's intermediate senior, where in this teaching division, 2 Teachables are required. Again, core courses are given preference for admission, and there can also be things called related courses. And again, you'll find more specific information about, okay, what's a core course, what's a related course on the specific program page that you might want to apply to. The level of undergrad courses used for Teachables matters, and experience with the age group as well. Are there things you want to add to intermediate senior?
No, I think that was good.
Okay, so just some general notes for these teaching divisions. Normally, you complete your Teachables before you apply to your teacher education program. There are some exceptions. Sometimes, so normally, applications for Ontario teaching programs are due December 1st this year, and I think generally every year that is just the date or in and around there. And so normally you will have your Teachables complete before you apply, which means in the year that you're applying, you would have, I don't know, like let's say you're applying in your 3rd year or maybe your 4th year. If you're in a 4-year program, you'd have to have your Teachables like done before your fall term, because you won't have your grades for your fall term courses in before you apply to this program. Now there are some exceptions. So sometimes programs are like, yeah, no worries, just have your Teachables done before August. And so I would always encourage reaching out and connecting with the program or programs that you're specifically applying to connect with someone who directly works for and supports that program, because they will be able to give you more information about what exceptions are possible there. One additional note would be after you've completed your teacher education program, you do have the opportunity to pursue additional qualifications or AQs. And these are courses to advance your studies further, including division specific. So maybe you're in primary junior and you want to teach intermediate senior. And there is an additional qualification you can take to be able to teach in that teaching division. There's subject specific AQs. So I don't know, maybe you're an English teacher and you want to start teaching science. Again, there's a subject specific AQ to be able to grow or increase the amount of teachable subjects that you're qualified to teach. And then there are learner specific courses. So these include courses for special education, courses to support folks with autism spectrum disorder, courses to support folks with communication disorders. So there's lots of ways after you're done your teacher education program to get, I don't know, more broad or maybe a little bit more specific in what areas you're qualified to teach in. Are there things that you want to add, Libby, to either Teachables exceptions and or additional qualifications?
One quick thing with the Teachables before you apply. A loophole that I found when I applied last year was you are allowed, so for guaranteed admission, you do have to do it before your fall semester. What they will do if you are taking teachable courses, which I took 3 of mine in the fall of the year that I applied, is if they'll send you like iffy offer, I like to call it, where you get your offer of admission if you can get those courses at a certain grade. So what I had to do was like, I submitted my application with the current grade I had in all those teachable courses, and then as well, like what they were and what levels they were. And then in January, they emailed me and said, hi, we want your final grades in order for you to still be like considered. Otherwise, it'll be like deferred possibly. So that's something to consider too. It is like one extra step. And I don't know if every single school will email you or if you just have to remember to upload it at some point. But that is one way you can kind of work around if you are looking at doing this like next year and you know you don't have space to do it before the fall semester. That is one way to kind of fit it all in there somehow.
I'm wondering, before we maybe move on, I want to check in and ask what questions are coming up for folks, and just note a little bit before maybe we let folks into the waiting room, we were talking about ladybugs and there is one currently crawling on my laptop. So if I seem distracted, that is why. But yeah, I'm wondering if there are questions coming up for literally anything we've been chatting about so far. And I'm going to try and see, maybe I can open the chat box.
Sorry, I had muted myself. I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I noticed that you guys mentioned additional qualifications. Where would you go if you were interested in taking some of these additional courses?
I know this.
Go for it.
When you're graduated from your Bachelor of Education, so like whenever you finish Teachers College, you can do it at any school. It's on the OCT website. When you graduate, you'll get an OCT login, and that's where you can see what's offered and when. You don't have to take the EQ courses at the same school that you did your Bachelor of Education. So you can take it wherever. A lot of them are online, which is amazing because then you don't have to travel to take an EQ. And so you can see exactly what's offered and when, and then kind of the duration of that course. But you have to be graduated in order to do it. You can do it right when you graduate, like that summer, or you can do it like as you're teaching.
So you have to have your Bachelor of Education to get it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. There's some questions in the chat. I might just try and like answer them right now, if that's okay. So a teachable, Layla, your question, what is the definition of a teachable? A teachable is when you teach older grades, you might recall in like grade 7 to 12, you had a teacher for history, or you had like a separate teacher for gym or health or French. Those are teachables. So you'll go in for an older grade in order to teach like those courses. So for example, like I'm in a history teachable. So when I go to get a job, like I'll be taking history jobs. The next one is from Hannah. It says, what are some good ways to get experience with intermediate senior age students or students in general? There is a website, actually, I'm going to put it in the chat if that's okay. It's called Charity Village. I think it's .ca, it might be .com, sorry. And you can filter through like age range of people that you want to volunteer with, what type of volunteer job it is, like full-time, part-time, on call. And then like what capacity you want to do it in. So you can do it in a group home, in a camp, that sort of stuff. I find that I see the most opportunities on there for all age ranges, like not just intermediate senior, but also like younger ages of children too. So I definitely check there. Amanda, your question about are there recommended teachables that make you more marketable? French, yeah, French is definitely the one. French is super high demand. People get hired really quickly, really easily from doing a French teachable. They're pretty much all going to be in demand in the next few years. Like you guys have really good timing with taking a look at this now, just because there's a lot of people that are going to be retiring in the next few years. So I would say anyone's a safe bet, but French is definitely like always a safe bet.
Can I add one thing to that?
For sure.
The OCT, oh gosh, I forget the name of the document, but I will look at it. I will search for it after I stop sharing my screen. They put out a publication yearly based on, I don't know, it's like a survey that they send out to literally every teacher. And from that, they go through that data to make some, to pull some information about, okay, like what teachables are in demand, or folks with this teachable secured employment, in this amount of time after graduation. So I would say that publication, again, I can't recall the name off the top of my head, but I'm writing myself a note to look it up afterwards, and I'll put that in the chat. That could be a really great source of information for you as well to parse through as you're thinking about Teachers College.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't even know that was a thing.
So you do, there's a question in the chat about like, where do I apply? So it is through OUAC, and the specific application is called TEAS, or Teacher Education Application System. So if you Google OUAC TEAS, that will bring up that application, and it doesn't cost you anything to like make an OUAC login. So you can go into TEAS and see like structurally what the application is like, if that would be helpful for folks as well. I'm seeing another question in the chat. Do certain teachers colleges give you an advantage to being hired afterwards or more prestige? I don't think so, not to my knowledge. I don't think there's a ranking system in terms of what's the best teachers college to go to. I could be wrong about that, but to my knowledge, I don't think it matters where your degree is from, as long as it's from an accredited teachers college program. And probably they're going to be paying more attention to who you are as a person and how you support folks that you're going to be teaching, rather than where your degree is from. I don't know if there's things you want to add to that, Libby, or if you have different information.
So Laurier is the smallest one and the hardest one to get into just because of its size. For that reason, it's really easy when you're in teachers college, like you have placements and stuff and actual physical teaching hours that you have to complete before you graduate. Because of the size and the demand from schools for Laurier students in that program, it's really easy to get a placement there. I don't know what it looks like yet outside of school. Like when you go to get a job, I don't know what that's like just because I'm still in it. So I can't speak on like the aftermath, but from my experience, it's definitely been very easy to get placements and stuff so far compared to like other people that I know. But that's when you're in it, and I don't know what it looks like after.
Okay, I'm seeing another question in the chat. Is a 3-year or 4-year degree better to apply for teachers college? A 3-year degree is the minimum for Ontario Teachers College. So in terms of which one is better, what most Ontario teachers programs look at, like how they adjudicate applications, this is it. There might be a little bit of difference program to program, but most is 50% is grades, and then 50% is your experience profile. What rubric they use for their experience profile, we have no clue. So we don't know specifically how they are assessing those, but that's kind of the breakdown. 50% is your grades, 50% is your experience profile. If you were to connect with a program directly and ask, would you prefer a 3-year or 4-year degree? Or maybe, I don't know, some programs either publish statistics or will give you that information if you ask, like how many folks did you admit last year with a 3-year versus a 4-year degree? That might give you some more information. I don't know if I don't know the answer to which one is better. All we know is a 3-year degree is a minimum. Are there other things you could add to that, Libby? And if not, that's cool too.
Yeah, like from what I've seen, most have a 4-year one. It's not obviously required, so I wouldn't like stress about it if you're only planning on doing a 3-year one. I would focus heavily on like your experiences and what those look like and what that means for you in your application. And then as well, like if you have any minors or anything like specializations, I know SDS has a bunch, so those can always help like enhance if you're worried about it, but it's not like the be all end all.
I'm seeing some other questions in the chat that will be answered in a few slides. How to get a Teachable, we're going to chat about that. We're going to talk a little bit about doing a Bachelor of Education outside of Canada. If you want to teach in Canada, we're going to chat about that in a little bit. What else? What type of experiences did you have with volunteering with the age group of your division before applying to Teachers College? So maybe I will pass this one off to you, Libby.
Sure.
You are super qualified to answer it.
Yeah, I have a lot. So I was a lifeguard for a long time. I also taught swimming lessons for a few years. I've worked at Teachability. I've read to kids in libraries before. That was a volunteer one. I was a SDS peer mentor for a while. This job with younger kids, like summer camp and stuff, is often like the easiest and often the most fun option for that kind of thing. Yeah, I think I've volunteered at a hospital too. I think those are the main ones. One thing that might be helpful is like they place a lot of emphasis on like if you have a few different age ranges, and then also if you have like prolonged experience or prolonged interest. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a job, but if you volunteered in high school and carried on volunteering in some capacity with children or in a mentoring role, those are the kind of things. It doesn't have to be like directly teaching, but and it doesn't always have to be like school age kids. Like my job here is working with like undergraduate students or post-grad students. So it can be like a wide range of people.
A couple more questions about Teachables. So we're going to hold off on answering those. I am seeing another question in the chat about like doing a master's of teaching versus a BEd program. I would say this is probably a really, really great question, either for a further education drop-in and or maybe a full-length appointment, but we will be putting the link to the further education support. We'll put that link into the chat at the end of the presentation because this, I don't know, there might be several factors to chat about with this question. So it would be perfect. A perfect example of a thing to have maybe a longer conversation about. So I'll hold off on answering that one for now. Okay, gonna move us forward. Okay, do you want me to do this one, Libby? Do you want me to do this one?
I can do it.
Okay, cool.
I'm just gonna move the chat because it's in my there. Yeah, so this is what generally programs look at. There will be some specific things that they require or look at, and that will all be in the admissions page of the specific school's website. But this is a general idea of what every school is likely going to require. So grades are always a factor. They take either your best or last 2 years or your best 20 credits. So like 20 half credits if you have a class that was a full credit, so 1.0 like on your transcript. They'll also take that if that's like one of your top grades. It'll just be calculated a bit differently in how many they take. The minimum average for admission is a 70. The minimum doesn't always guarantee admission. It's very dependent on who's applying that year and how many people they're admitting, because if they're admitting 100 people and the top 100 have around 80% average, then that becomes the average to get in, if that makes sense. Experience is also another thing that they look at. So multiple age groups, like we kind of chatted about on the last slide, as well as interest for a long period of time. the subject matter as well. So if you're looking at becoming like a math teacher and you've tutored math at like a facility or from home or something like that, that can also be really helpful because it shows interest in that specific teachable. Teaching context can look like if you're like leading a summer camp, tutoring, mentoring in some capacity. And then also if it's relevant to you and you're passionate about it, that's also something that they look at seeing. There's also a few additional components. So that looks like teachables that you require within your undergraduate degree, and then program specific requirements and recommendations. Those can kind of look like for me, for example, like at Laurier, when I applied for history. A program specific requirement for me applying in a history teachable was that I had a certain number of courses that I completed here in Canadian history. So that's just an example of that, but they differ based on like where you're applying and the age that you're looking to apply for. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is some programs will have recommendations, and to know what those specific recommendations are, you have to go to the program website. I feel like this happens a lot at Brock from what I'm remembering. There's like the requirements and then it's recommended, and we don't have information on, okay, is it like actually a requirement though? Like, are they just saying, like, are they all requirements? If I don't do the recommended things, will I not get in? We don't have that kind of information. And what would be super useful is connecting with someone in that program. Or a lot of the times programs will do like info sessions, and for the last chunk of time, because of our reality, they've been virtual. And I would hope that most programs kind of keep that virtual context, or maybe deliver those info sessions in a hybrid model, so that, I don't know, if you want to go somewhere else in Ontario and it's a bit of a trek for you, that you can still access that information. But I would definitely, I cannot highly recommend enough connecting with the program that you're interested in when you have specific questions about, okay, well, how likely is it? Or like having these recommendations done, how much more is that going to make me a competitive applicant for the program? Yeah. Okay. So what do I need to apply? Okay, so we've chatted a little bit about this before, so maybe we'll say some more specific things. So again, your experience profile, usually worth around 50% of the weight of your application. Your experience profile, I mean, you can really think of it as like a personal statement or statement of intent. A lot of the writing, reflective writing that you might be doing for a personal statement might show up in an experience profile, but they are specific questions, usually related to like you as a person, related to your experiences in teaching context or teaching kids of different age sets. So I would say they're usually question-based. On T's, there is a portion of the application guide where it links you to the specific requirements for the experience profile for each program. That's maybe the one really annoying thing about the application portal itself, is it doesn't contain all the information. So if you want to know, okay, what questions is Laurier going to ask me, you have to go to Laurier's website to see what questions are in this experience profile. It won't be on T's. And unless I'm misremembering, Libby, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes the experience profile you don't submit through T. Sometimes there's like a different place you have to go to submit this information directly to the school.
Yeah, most of the experience profile stuff will be due at a different date. It depends very much on the specific school, so I would definitely double check due dates and stuff. But for all the schools I applied to, it was done within that school's profile. So you'll get a link to their portal with a student login when you submit like your money through OUAC. And that's where you'll put in your experience profile stuff.
Yeah. And I would say chatting about like these specific questions in an experience profile, if you're like, I don't know how the heck to answer this, or maybe you have like a draft of what you want to say, but it's like 1,500 words and you only have 500, that would be something like totally appropriate for further education support as well. So whether it's like, you know, working through the application, whether it's like working through the experience profile, maybe chatting about, I don't know, okay, what the heck are teachables and do I have everything I need? Those are all sorts of things that you can connect with further education on. Okay, so verifiers or references sometimes. I think like I've seen this for 2 Ontario programs where you need either verifiers to say like, yes, this person did this thing. And a verifier can literally be anyone, just not someone who's related to you. So it could be someone who supervised that experience. It could be, I don't know, maybe you have an academic award on your transcript and you can literally show it to your roommate or your best friend and list them as your verifier. It just cannot be a family member. But again, this is very few programs will require verifiers or references. I feel like it might be 2 programs. It's not a very common thing for teacher education programs. Obviously grades. So minimum, as Libby was saying before, the minimum is 70%, but every application cycle, admissions committees will look at, okay, overall, like what's the kind of like standard here, and they might make admissions decisions based on grades. And also grades are normally around 50% or account for 50% of your application. And then you also need your teachables to apply as well. If you are applying in the junior intermediate or intermediate senior teaching divisions, you don't need teachables for primary. And so making sure that you have the correct number of undergraduate courses to count that subject as a teachable. Okay, I feel like our next slide, yeah, okay. I was gonna say, I wanna get into like specifics about teachables so that we can kind of answer those lingering questions in the chat and before maybe we pause to answer more questions. So what's the deal with teachables? Libby, do you wanna speak to this?
Sure.
Okay.
So for primary junior, they're obviously not required. So we're going to be looking at junior, intermediate, and intermediate senior. So for the junior section of teaching, there's 1 teachable required. What that means is for most programs, we'll word it as 3 full courses, which for UW on your transcript will translate to 6 half-credit courses. Are required, that's the minimum. If you have more than 6 half credits, they'll just take your top 6. So that's kind of nice. Same average, 70% required or more. There's additional requirements within those 3 full courses sometimes. So what I was talking about earlier with my history one, like a few had to be Canadian history. It'll be similar little blips and requirements for whatever teachable you pick. And that will depend on the school that you're going to. Each school will have like a different set of requirements for that teachable. They need to be completed before or during the fall semester of the year you apply. Ideally before, just so you have those final grades and you don't have to worry about doing any extra paperwork. And if you do the junior intermediate program, you get the qualification when you graduate to teach grades 4 to 10. So with that being said, with intermediate senior, there's 2 teachables. The first teachable looks a bit different depending on the school you apply to. It'll need either 5 or 6 full courses. So that translates to 10 if you're doing the 5 or 12 if you're doing 6 half credit courses. And that's for your first one. There will be a list of subjects that you can pick from. Second teachable is a bit more relaxed. It's the 3 full courses or 6 half credit courses. And that will have to be obviously different from your first teachable. And you will be able to teach grades 7 to 12 when you come out of that. I do just want to note, we don't have it on here, but Teachables look different at each school. I think this is somewhere else on a different slide, but I'm just going to say it here. What Teachable you might want might not be offered at the school that you're looking at. So it's important to make sure that the schools that you're interested in offer that, or figure out where your Teachables are offered as part of that Bachelor of Education program. That was a lot of information.
There is one question in the chat that I think is related to what you just shared, Libby. So how do you know whether your program or your courses qualify as a Teachable? This information will be on the program website itself. Usually there, somewhere on the program website, there's like either a list or a chart that details what kinds of courses, like what course codes qualify as a Teachable. So obviously anything coded, you know, English, ENGL, will be usually, unless it's something like Libby said, like business writing. So there's like restrictions around what can qualify as satisfying that Teachable requirement. And the only way you're going to know that information is if you check with the program website itself. Yeah, and if you aren't sure, email the admissions office. Totally, that's my default. Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering, maybe I'll just take, yeah, okay. So maybe let's move along. Okay, so when do I apply? So we have a couple of different dates on here to give you a sense of the application cycle for teaching. So September through December 1st, the application will be open and available on OUAC. It's specifically the TEAS application. So it opens sometime in September and closes December 1st. December 1st to December 18th, you submit supplementary information to each individual school that you've applied to. We've given a date range here because some programs require that supplementary information December 1st, others December 8th, others December 18th. And so definitely make sure that you know when you have to submit that information. And that supplementary information is, sometimes it's your experience profile, sometimes it's those references, sometimes it's transcripts. So there's a variety of things or a variety of dates in there, and it really just depends on the program. February 1st is the earliest date that you will find out which programs you've been offered admission to. By March 1st, all first round offers will be complete. End of June, beginning of July is when you have to send proof of your conferred undergraduate degree. And usually that could be like an official transcript. Most programs will accept unofficial, but want the official like before you can say, yes, I want to go to this program. And then sometime in the springtime is when waitlisted admission offers might go out, or rolling admission. So if, you know, by the springtime programs still have room in their programs, you can check on TEAS which programs still have spots. And ideally programs want to fill those spots because at the end of the day, they're here to make money. And that's one way they make money is by charging you tuition. And so it might not happen every year, and it definitely happened this year. There was rolling admission for some teacher education programs in Ontario. What would you like to add to the timeline of things, Libby?
When you get your admission offer, sorry, my cat is at my feet, making noise. Yeah, when you get your admission offer, there will be a little section that tells you where to go to accept it. There's usually a date you need to accept your offer by. It's usually about a month after you hear from them that you got an admission offer. So I would pay attention to that date once you receive it. They'll give you like a direct link to accept it. It's not a hard process. It's just paying attention to that date if you're waiting on offers from schools you might want to go to more.
Okay. Whoops. Oh, let me go back. I clicked too many times. Okay, so where should I apply? There's like three main things to think through when you're thinking about, okay, how many, like where do I want to apply? Maybe how many programs do I want to apply to? So one would be level. Not all schools offer all levels, like all teaching divisions. Again, this information on what schools offer what levels or what teaching levels, that information, there's a chart on T's that tells you, okay, Brock does this, and this program. I don't know why I keep referencing Brock, but that's the one that's stuck in my head. So level could be one thing that determines where you apply. Teachables is another. Not all schools offer all teachables. And school board might also be important to you. Teachers are hired based on seniority. And so when you were doing your placement program as part of your teacher education program, the time that you spend in placement counts towards your seniority in that school board. Whereas if you do your placement in one school board and for whatever reasons you might want to teach in a different school board, you will have zero seniority at that other school board when you start applying for jobs there. So those are the three main things to kind of think through. What teaching level do I want to apply to? What teachables do I have? And ideally, what school board do I want to work in? Or what school board might be possible for me to work in after I'm done my program? Are there things you want to add to this, Libby?
No, it all sounded good. Thanks.
Okay, so one, I think, big component as well in determining where to apply is thinking about how much does it cost to apply to Teachers College. And it can get expensive depending on how many programs you want to apply to. So there is a TEAS application service fee, which is $100. This application cycle, I'm assuming it shifts, meaning it probably increases over time. And this year it was $159, which includes 3 programs. If you want to apply to more than 3, it's an extra $51 per additional choice. There is a transcript request fee, but again, so it's $12 per program, but you submit your unofficial transcript, which you can download in Quest when you are applying, and only send your official transcript after acceptance. So that way you're not like spending a buttload of money sending official transcripts to programs that you're not even sure if you're going to get into. There are also supplementary fees. And so these depend on the school. The cheapest I saw was $60 and the most expensive was $100. And again, all of these fees are laid out in the TEAS portal. The good news is it's one payment per school. So if you apply to 2 teaching divisions at one school, it's only one supplementary fee. You don't pay per teaching division at a specific school. What else might be helpful to chat about here, Libby?
With the TEAS application service fee, the 3 programs that are included in that base fee do include if you apply to 2 age groups at one school. So for me, I applied to Western for one program, Laurier for one age group, and Laurier for a second age group. So my supplementary fees, I only paid for Laurier once because that's the same school. But that was my 3 programs for my TEAS service fee. So they do get a little tricky with it. And it's important to kind of like lay it all out and see, okay, like who do I have to pay when and how many times? But that's just something I thought of.
I just maybe want to add one thing to a question that was asked in the chat. Is applying earlier better? And as Libby shared in the chat, it makes no difference. You have the same chances of being admitted if you submit your application in like, I don't know, September versus like December 1st at 11:59 p.m. But what can be helpful to know is that the experience profile generally takes a chunk of time because it requires a lot of reflective thinking and writing and brainstorming. And so if you know you're going to be applying to teachers college, I wouldn't leave the experience profile until the last minute because different schools ask different questions. Some of them ask pretty similar questions, and it's okay to use, what you submitted for one school. Like maybe you're going to steal 150, 200 words from that for another program, if it makes sense. Like it's okay if you want to duplicate your own labor. No one is going to be like, oh no, an academic integrity offense on a teacher education program application. That doesn't exist. But it does take a lot of thinking and writing and revising. And so I wouldn't leave that to the last minute. Okay. Are there other things? Yes, some schools, Casper might be a thing. I can't remember off the top of my head because medicine and teaching and rehab programs are like all smushed together in there right now. And so that might be possible. I feel like it is. Libby, you did Casper, right?
Last year, Casper was very much a thing. So a snapshot, which is the second part of Casper, that is sometimes required. This year, it's Alberta. So it seems as though it greatly depends on the year and the types of things that they require in applications. They might have like enhanced their personal statement stuff, and so they didn't need a Casper test. But yeah, you'll be able to see that when you go and look at each specific school in the year you want to apply. I would recommend checking like that year just so that you're not getting old information that might be outdated. Someone asked what a Casper test is really quickly. That is like a test that's sometimes required for some graduate programs. It's very ethics based. They'll ask you like personal questions for your opinions on certain things. It's just like an online, almost like a personality kind of test.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just is kind of to see like what you're like, because some applications aren't super personal.
Yeah, so Casper is like really popular in professional school and graduate school programs that are specifically for like person-centered careers, because they want to know like who are you as a human being in certain instances. And I don't know, maybe your communication isn't your strong suit, and in a person-centered career that might be a really, really important quality for you to have. I've written myself a note to remember to share this in the chat. We do have an asynchronous video on like what is Casper, so I will share the link to our further education resources page because we break Casper down in that video, which could be super useful. Okay, I'm just scrolling through. Will the recording be posted anywhere? Yes, it will be. I'm not specific. Oh, okay, Jen's answered that. Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna move us along. Okay, what if I want to study abroad but teach in Ontario? So there is a lot of information in here, and this specific question might also be something to chat through in an appointment. So on this slide, I have a link to OCT's website because they have a whole section of their website dedicated to internationally educated teachers. And they have like a whole guide. They also do like pre-COVID, they would do like in-person workshops on specifically this subject. Maybe that'll be a thing that returns in the future, but for now, they also have like a lot of asynchronous resources on their website. So there's like 5 main chunks of things if you want to study abroad and then come back to teach in Ontario. So there's certification requirements. You need your post-secondary degree, which you're getting through Renison. You need your teacher education program. There is a lot more detail on the OCT about what a teacher education program has to have in order for the OCT to accept that as a credential. So like there's specifics in terms of like how much time you spend in the classroom versus like how many hours of a practicum you need. And so I would definitely check out that guide on OCT's website. You need a language proficiency, so either English or French. You will need to complete, if you do not do your teacher education program in, I want to say in Canada, but I could be wrong. It might be specific to Ontario, but you need to complete, if you do it outside, you need to do the Ontario Math Proficiency Test. And there's more details, again, on the OCT about kind of what that test entails. Professional suitability. So by this, the OCT defines the Canadian criminal record check and applicant declaration questions. I don't know specifically what these applicant declaration questions are, and I'm guessing there would be more information when you are, like, when you have your application to register with the college. There would be more information there about specifically what those declaration questions entail. The last thing you'll need is documentation. So transcripts and a statement of professional standing, these two documents need to come from the school that administered that teacher education program. And oftentimes with transcripts, they need to be evaluated by, oh, what's it called? World Education Service is one service that evaluates transcripts. And this is just so in case the grading scheme is different in that program, the OCT can look at that transcript and know kind of what they're looking at and how it maps to Ontario programs. So transcripts and statement of professional standing, those are things that come from the school that you do your program at. Documentation that you are responsible for providing the OCT are proof of identity and your criminal record check report. So we could definitely say a lot more about the intricacies of any, like, studying abroad and teaching in Ontario. And this again would be such a perfect subject or conversation to have in either a further education drop-in or in a further education appointment. Are there things you want to add to this, Libby?
We had a really good question in the chat, which was, do you need to take the Ontario Math Proficiency Test if you're not going to be a math teacher? The answer is yes. Everyone needs to. The reasoning I've been given is so that if you, like, you have to supply for a certain amount of time before you get a full-time job as a teacher. And if you do a math supply or a long-term placement at a school, you need to know what you're doing. Math proficiency test, excuse me, depends on what grade level you're going in for. So if you're in there for primary up until the junior intermediate levels, you'll need to know math from like grade 1 to 10. If you're doing intermediate senior levels in your program, you'll need to know up to grade 12. They help you prepare. There's a lot of math courses in each teacher's college program, and then they also have some extra preparation stuff for you as like a teaching candidate. So it's not like they're just kind of throwing you in there, but yeah, even if you're going to school here, if you're going to school somewhere else, you need to take that if you want to teach in Ontario specifically. I don't know what math requirements exist or look like in other provinces, but yeah.
Okay, what if I want to teach abroad? Libby, do you want to chat about this one?
Yes. Okay, so there's some cool stuff for teaching abroad that's really exciting to kind of look at. So the first method is kind of interesting. I call it the SWAP method because it's kind of the easiest name for it. So what that looks like is once you graduate and you've been teaching for a little while, if you decide like, hey, I want to go teach in Europe for a year and just see what that looks like more short term, like 1 year, maybe 2 years, you can do this thing where you'll apply within your school board as a teacher to go work somewhere. You like list the country and cities that you're interested in within that country. And then they will find someone who's in that city or country who wants to come to where you're located as a teacher. And you guys will do a swap. So there's a lot of documentation that goes with that. Obviously, you're swapping houses, you're swapping vehicles or modes of transportation. You're basically doing a full life swap with somebody for a year. And so that can be a really cool way to experience what teaching is like in other areas without having to commit to moving somewhere or selling wherever you're living and you know that you still have like your same job to come back to whenever you're done. There's also finding a job abroad. There's obviously a lot of documentation that comes with this too, because you're going to be moving somewhere. That can be a bit more flexible about how long you want to go for, since the SWAT method is usually just 1 year. It also is very much dependent on how in demand teaching is in the specific country that you want to go to. You can find out if teaching is in demand in that country on government websites. They'll often have in like immigration or working abroad sections on those websites, a list of jobs that are in demand that year. And so that's an easy way to find. And some of them will be as specific as to say like, yeah, we really need science teachers or we really need English teachers. So it's important to take a look at that, because obviously they'll want to hire people who are living domestically before they hire international teachers. Yeah, those are the two main options. You can also get jobs like being an English teacher in places that don't have English as a first speaking language. If you're from like an English speaking country as like one of their first languages. And so that's a similar process as finding a job abroad. That's a question I've been asked a lot, is like, if I want to go teach English, you don't have to take like an English teachable in your program. You just have to do an English proficiency test kind of thing. Becky, is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think that was a lovely summary of the options. Maybe I'll just point out, Jen did share in the chat about the ACE TESOL training. If you are interested in pursuing the certification to teach English to multilingual learners, Renison does offer that. And I'm guessing there's probably upcoming like workshops detailing, okay, what is this? How much does it cost? What will it get me? What opportunities do I have afterwards? So definitely check out the link that Jen shared in the chat. Okay, I feel like we're nearing the end. Yeah, we are. Okay, so if you want support with, I don't know, literally any part of applying to Teachers College, definitely you can get support. The link that is on this slide and that I will also put in the chat links to a booking form. And in that form, you can share details, whatever context might be helpful for you. And the more you can share, the better we're able to match you with a support. So sometimes support looks like a link to resources, sometimes a drop-in, a booked drop-in appointment, sometimes a booked hour-long appointment, just depending on maybe how like complicated your questions might get. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our content. And now this is just like a free-for-all kind of question period. I don't know, Jen, we're happy to also record this. I'll be sticking around as well if there's questions people want to ask but don't want them to appear on the recording. So yeah, just like free for all question time.
Sorry to just interject here. You did say free for all though. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a question. It's kind of building off of Sarisha's question earlier about a 3-year versus 4th-year degree. I just had like a slightly variance to the same question. If you wanted to pursue an intermediate, a senior like English teaching position, English as your first teachable, would it be advantageous to have a major declared in English, or would it be fine just to meet the teachable requirements within a liberal arts degree?
It's not going to give you like preferential treatment. It might be easier for you to complete them within like a certain time frame if you're doing an English major, but if you find that you can fit that into your schedule, they don't care what you major in.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah,
I think that, also, does anything from like, say if you have a previous college diploma, like I did a journalism diploma years ago, does that have any weight on a teacher's college application?
terms of courses and stuff, I would ask the place that you're thinking of applying to, like the school you want to apply to, because they might be able to like transfer some credits over, but it depends on like what program you want to do and what their admissions process looks like. There's some that are more lenient with that kind of stuff, and they're more willing to transfer stuff, and some are really strict.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I also have a question.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Sorry.
No, no worries.
I was just curious if there were any like student groups for people who are also going through this process, like for people to share information and resources, things like that, anything that you know of?
That's interesting. I actually don't.
I don't know if there's, my go-to would be is if there's like a UW club. I don't know off the top of my head. I know there is for like other types of like professional school programs at UW. There's like a pharmacy, there's a medicine. So I would maybe check out UW clubs to see.
Yeah, I looked a while back. I didn't see anything.
Yeah. Other than that, I know like if, you know, helpful information comes across my inbox, I try and share that with like, I don't know, appropriate networks on campus, like program coordinators or academic advisors to like distribute to their students. But beyond like a dedicated kind of community of folks going through this, I don't know anything off the top of my head, and maybe chatting with folks in your program, maybe that might be a helpful place to start. Yeah. I'm sorry that's not more helpful.
No, that's okay. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. I'm just going through the chat. Let's see here.
There's an interesting one about deciding between like which age to teach. And then there's also one, hang on, let me scroll, about additional qualifications after getting a teacher degree to pursue another teachable. So I kind of want to answer both of those in one. So with the age group to teach, I would say always aim higher if you can, just because it is a lot easier to end up with 2 teachables and not have to really worry about it and be able to teach at an older age and decide you want to go younger than it is to do the opposite and decide you want to go older. In terms of working on additional qualifications after you get your teaching degree, there's no course requirements for them. You literally just have to have your Bachelor of Ed, and you can do like whatever you want. Like you could go in for English or history or anything. You don't have to have like certain undergrad credits in order to do an additional qualification. So hopefully that helps. It's a bit more lenient of a process. A lot of them also have like a few parts to them. If you want to do like grade 12 science and your teachable wasn't in science, you might have to do a few additional qualifications. Like most of them are going to be in 3 parts. So that's something to consider, but it's not as like locked in of a process as I think it makes it seem when you go to apply. Like if you do junior intermediate, you're not locked in that age group forever.
I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can start putting links in the chat before I forget to do that. So are you okay to maybe go through some more questions in the chat?
Yeah.
Will I do that? Cool.
I'm just going to scroll so I can make sure. Working at a daycare, so an ECE job would be a really good experience. That is on the younger side, and I think there's a lot of applicants that tend to focus on the older side if they're interested in high school. So having that younger experience with like really young children could be beneficial, especially if you're thinking of applying for like younger ages for the junior primary teaching program. Yeah. And then you apply for your Bachelor of Ed during your final academic year. So like, yes, and you can also wait if you want to. You don't have to do it when you're in 3A or 4A or like fall of your last year. You can finish and do whatever and then apply later. Like there's a lot of mature applicants that apply a few years after their bachelor degree. So it doesn't have to be during your final year, but if you want to just go straight into another degree after you're done at UW, that would be the time to do it. Oh, and then sorry, I skipped the one above by accident. Demand for specific teaching divisions, or is it similar across the board? I actually don't know. I know right now, like French everywhere is in demand. There's also a lot of demand for STEM. So like in high school, they have like the technology courses or that kind of thing, or like science and math and stuff. Those are always going to be in demand. Right now, there's starting to be a demand just for teachers in general, just because of the pandemic and people retiring and stuff. So I would say you guys are in like a pretty safe boat in terms of teaching. Like it's good timing to start to think about getting into it.
I got a quick question, if it's okay to
Sure.
jump in.
Yeah.
So I know, like me specifically, like in my undergraduate degree, and I'm sure a lot of people are in a similar case, like COVID hit before the end of my first year.
Okay.
So I would be applying like next fall, I guess, if I wanted to go right into it, as you mentioned. But obviously with COVID, like there wasn't a lot of opportunity to gain that like experience necessarily in university. So do you know if teachers colleges are taking that into account, like the fact that COVID was a thing, so there might not be as much experience, or is it kind of like all for their own kind of thing?
Yes and no. So I know there's some schools that are definitely cognizant of the fact that COVID has been a thing. Some not so much. Some schools will require some teaching related experience, or one of the ones that you list in your experience profile and personal statement, to be within the last 2 years. It doesn't matter how long you did it for. It doesn't matter if it was remote. It just, like, one of them will have to be pretty recent. If you are having trouble finding one, online tutoring is like a super saturated and easy thing to find right now, I find, because there's so many kids that need tutors, and there's so many tutoring like facilities that aren't yet like open in person. So that can be something to look into that might be helpful. It also doesn't have to be working with kids directly. One of my experience profile things that I used to apply was I was a transcriber for a history magazine that was affiliated with like the National Geographic. And so I transcribed like World War documents. And so like it related to my Teachable, but I wasn't working with kids. And so you can look for things like that too, that might relate sort of to, if you're using a Teachable, relates to that, but isn't like hands-on with kids if you're having trouble finding that. They also give you space to write any issues that you might have had with COVID and stuff like that, from my experience in the application process. So that can be a good spot to put that in there too.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just had a quick question. I know that I had mentioned something about like groups and things like that people could join going through this. Do you guys have the ability to create a poll and see how many people would be interested in that? Because I could always set up a Facebook group, but I just wanted to know if there was actual interest.
That's a great question. I feel like, I don't know, it sounds like SDS has a Facebook page or a group. So I think Facebook does polls. I'm not on Facebook these days. So I feel like, yeah, that could be something. And I would connect with maybe Jen about seeing if that's a possibility for folks specifically in your program.
Okay. I meant more generally like to this chat, like, or like, do you guys have the option of posing that question to people here?
Let me see.
And getting response. I'm not sure if Zoom has that function. I know some of the like the video calls do, where you can pose that as a question and you can see how many people would be interested.
I'm trying to see. I don't think I have the capacity to do a poll. I can share, I can record, I can do subtitles. I don't have the capacity to do that poll, but I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know if like there was, I'm thinking through like if folks had to register to attend this, there could be a way to access emails and send out like a, or what's it called? A doodle poll to folks who are here. That could be an option if we do have emails.
I was going to say too, if you ever decide to make that group, or you can go ahead and send it to us and we'd be more than happy to advertise it on the different social media groups and different emails that we have through Renison, and then kind of take input from there.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm wondering if folks have other questions, or do we feel like maybe we want to wrap up? I know we've gone a little bit over, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's time to like sit on the couch and cuddle with like your cat or dog time of night. So yeah, I want to make sure that we hold space for questions, and if there are no more, then maybe we can start to wrap up.
I don't know if this is like pertinent to everybody, but if you're going to get educated abroad and come back and teach in Ontario, and it's in a country where they only require one teachable for high school or middle school, that senior level, can you come back and take courses for second teachable?
Yeah, so that
great.
would be like an alternative or an additional qualification, sorry. So it's the same process, like you just find the teachable that you want to be your second one and go through that process. And it'll likely be like a 3-part course.
Okay, and how would that cost? How much would that cost as like a course?
They're like $600 a course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm also seeing a question about taking French as a language course, if that would be helpful, not necessarily towards a teachable, but if it would be helpful in the future. That's a really great question. I would probably tend towards, I feel like French is always a desirable teachable to have. I don't know how helpful it would be for your application just to share, oh, like I've taken these French courses. Like I don't know what that, like how an admissions committee would interpret that. I do know how they would interpret like, I have French as a teachable. But I don't know if that matches. If you don't want to be like, if you don't want to teach French, you have no interest in that, you're not passionate about it, I probably wouldn't force yourself to pursue that as a teachable. Oh, the basic level. Yeah, so I mean, it might depend on what courses a teacher education program like counts towards, like what level of course. So I'm guessing any 100 level French course, like 151, 152, 190 something, probably might not count because they're 100 level. But again, programs would have more information about what level of French course is required. And I don't know, there might be more restrictions, like maybe they have to be like like language and grammar. You can take like French history courses, French literature courses. And I'm unsure off the top of my head if those kind of courses would count towards a teachable, or if it would very much be on like the structure and syntax and mechanics of the language. Yeah, so I don't know if that quite answers your question. And we could totally pursue that in an appointment as well. And I just remembered that I forgot to put the link to our booking form in the chat. So I'm going to do that right now.
Hi, sorry, just wanted to add on, since I got a bit tired of typing. When talking about the teachables, if I'm just asking this to confirm, like for example, for junior intermediate, we need one teachable and 3 full courses at University of Waterloo. So let's say if you're majoring in something, that would definitely fulfill the requirements. But for the intermediate or senior, you need 2 teachables. So if, for example, if a major does fulfill the 10 to 12 0.5 courses, would, for example, a minor where you have to do, I presume, 6 to 8 as per different faculties, would that as a minor just count towards the teachable?
Most likely, I would still look at like what the specific requirements are for the teachables section for both of those, because they might have like specific types of that course that they want you to take. And then also specific like levels like 1, 2, 3, 400. But that is often like a really good way to get like 90% of them done, is if you already have a major or minor in that. It's a really easy way to like check off those boxes.
Oh, okay, I see. Since, for example, right now I'm looking at, for example, English as a major and psychology as a minor. So, if, for example, if I do go into teachers college, having both of them as part of the intermediate or senior program, I think would be just more organized in terms of having all my courses done and meeting the requirements or having like the checklist ticked off.
I know psychology specifically can be one of those tricky teachables because not all schools offer like psychology, sociology, like social science courses. So I would say maybe doing like by all means, yes, psychology minor. And I always like to flag that for folks. It's not as popular a subject at a lot of schools. And so it can restrict or put some more restrictions on where you might want to apply after you're done your program. Maybe looking specifically, okay, what like school boards or schools have this specific social science or offer specific social science courses.
Interesting. All right, I will definitely look into it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do folks have other questions they'd like to ask?
Not, I think we can wrap this up for this evening. Thank you so much, Becky and Libby, for walking us through all of that and answering all of our questions. You guys are really helpful. And yeah, I put in the chat just for everyone here, if you are interested in teaching abroad, I put there'll be an info night on that on the 12th, which is this Friday. So you can go ahead and register for that if you are interested. And there's also lots of other resources available through the Center for Career Action and other resources at U Waterloo.
You're
Thank you
welcome
for having us, everyone.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.